Now let's take a look at another student profile. One of the things that drew my attention immediately on the first page is that the student spent almost their entire life outside of the US and only moved to the US for their high school experience. This fact doesn't change much for me right now, but it is important context for me to consider as I read through the rest of the application. Perhaps it'll be one of the subjects that they want to talk about in their personal statement. Right off the bat, I noticed that the student did not include their GPA. While they did include all of their coursework, I can find that GPA elsewhere in my materials, but it is a matter of sort of crispness and the professionalism of making sure you fill out every part of your application, especially something as critical as a GPA. I'm going to make note of that just in case there's other small mistakes that the student's making throughout, which might make a different impression on me. As I look at their coursework, I see that there's a spread of different classes that they take. This student operates on a trimester system, so I have to spend a bit of time understanding how their schedule might relate to a typical semester system. The classes that they choose to take are a mix of honors, advanced, as well as standard or regular education classes. What I can see from this information is that the student has a clear preference towards certain subjects, those being the maths and sciences, and those sort of non-STEM, more social science, arts, or more creative focused coursework is maybe a bit more of a struggle for them. While not a knock on their application, it does show me that maybe the student doesn't have a very well-rounded academic profile. I'll keep reading to learn more. As I look at their test scores, I see that they scored a 1450 on the SAT. This is a pretty commendable score, but when we put it in the context of other students that would apply to a highly competitive institution like Northwestern, it falls in average and doesn't really do much to move the needle towards their academic candidacy. It sort of reinforces that they can meet the floor here. I'm neither impressed nor unimpressed by that score, but it is something for me to be aware of. Additionally, they did share their AP testing, all of testing being 4s. Overall, academically, this student I feel could meet the threshold. It is not a very confident yes, though. I am going to continue reading to learn a bit more about the profile, just in case there's details or other things, such as other strengths the student has that could complement their profile. But right now I'm moving forward a bit cautiously. I would want to see a bit more before giving a confident yes and moving the student forward based on the academic profile that I've seen so far. As I look at their activities, this student is a musician and has had a lot of success in their musicianship. I see that they have been involved in a Juilliard pre-college program where they perform consistently and have been doing that all through high school. I see that they have many other different involvements related to music as well. They've also been involved in community service, as well as other school spirit and independent research. As I look at some of the honors and accolades that they've been awarded, as a musician, they have earned many different awards around their instrument, including an International Solo Performance Award, which is quite impressive. That performance award came in their senior year, so nice to see them capitalize on their investment as a musician and achieve that so recently. Something that does give me pause is of these students' activities, 2 of them took place during freshman year. And while that's not wrong, I do have to ask the question of what kept them from sort of continuing performance in some of these areas through the later part of high school. Typically, I'd see students sort of achieving a lot of different awards or achievements in their 11th or 12th grade, and seeing the student only achieve some of their awards their first year of high school and not repeat them or do something else with that time after that makes me question a bit of how involved they are outside of music. So I'll keep reading to learn a little bit more. This student has stated that their desired future plan is to work in dentistry, if not as an orthodontist, or a general medicine practice. Now, let's read the student's personal statement. Immediately, something that jumps out to me in the student's writing is a mistake I see many students make in their personal statement, and that is overuse of using I as the subject of a sentence. This is a personal statement, and so it's totally fair to use I. It's grammatically correct, but this student relies very heavily on that sentence structure. I see throughout the entire essay, I remember, I felt, I heard, I never challenged, so on and so forth. While again, none of this is grammatically incorrect, it is a bit tiresome to read as it lacks variety, and it maybe shows a lack of creativity on the student's part in terms of how they're choosing to express their ideas using the language available to them. So while it's not an explicit red flag, I do have to sort of question the student's writing, and it makes me have a bit of pause when I think about what their writing could look like in a university environment based on what I'm seeing here. The topic of their essay is them as a family member challenging their parents' ideas around the importance of music in their life. I do always love hearing these personal stories that people share, and I feel like the student does share it well in terms of the maturity and thoughtfulness of a topic such as this. Overall, I'm a bit hesitant to move the student forward off of their writing. I think they get an appropriate score, but would question a bit of their writing proficiency based on the lack of variety in their sentence structure. While they did talk about the subject well and appropriately, the form in which they did means a little bit less for me. However, what holds this essay back is the lack of variety in their sentence structure. As mentioned earlier, the fact that they repeatedly start sentences with I becomes very repetitive and becomes a bit tough to read by the end of this essay. So I am not leaving this essay with positive thoughts, even though there were parts of it that I did enjoy. The overall picture I get here is that the student maybe isn't as strong of a writer as I would like them to be considered. I'll keep reading for future consideration. I'll now move on to their supplemental essay. And in this case, they're talking a bit more about why Northwestern specifically is the best fit for them versus any other school that they could be applying to. Again, the students relies really heavily on the same sentence format, starting almost every sentence with I this and I that. While it's not incorrect, it just shows a lack of variety and an over-reliance on one type of writing tool. So that holds me back a bit as I digest this supplemental material. They do call out appropriately that their desire would be to pursue a dual degree, both in the School of Music as well as in the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences, Benin being the School of Music. I do like that they put that research together and understood a bit about what could be offered. Another piece they do well is considering the quarter system and how the quarter system would allow for them to take more classes throughout their time in college versus just a traditional semester system. Anytime we can mention unique variations in a college application like the school schedule, any unique programs that they have that other schools don't offer, those read typically very well. It also makes a very strong case for why this institution versus any other institution being able to answer that question. As I wrap up this read, I am thinking a few different thoughts. Let me give my overall read of the student here. Academically, I feel like the student is meeting the threshold, but they're not as strong as maybe I would like to see them. A little bit more of a situation of they could survive in this environment versus thrive. So that's a little bit of what I'm thinking about as I consider their academics. As I think about some of their different activities and what they're involved with, they do a good job of having a variety of different interests and spending their time outside of just music, where it's clear they have a pretty dedicated amount of time set already in their schedule. A bit of hesitation around the fact that some of their involvements seem to have peaked their first or second year of high school and not really continued after that, so that does hold me back a little bit. But overall, I do feel they're spending their time well. The writing here, I think, is going to be a tougher piece for me. While I enjoy the content that was written in both their supplemental materials as well as their personal statement, the format and their writing voice just really made this a tougher read for me. Seeing something done repeatedly over and over, while not incorrect, does tend to drain a reader's attention span, and we want all readers to be focused in on what the actual content and core of your essay is versus noticing the formatting and noticing the writing voice, which is what happened here. So I'm a little hesitant to look on the writing in a positive light just because I saw the same sentence being used over and over again. Overall, I would very likely not move the student along. If I was to move the student along, I think it would be a very tough hill for them to climb to be able to be considered in the overall final decision. It's very likely the student wouldn't find a space on campus based on what I've evaluated here.